Hello everyone, and greetings from Laos, where I'm recording this. I'm currently on my own, solo again, travelling before I head back to India very soon. I wanted to talk today about airports. I have spent the last sort of nearly 18 months now travelling, although I've been a bit more statically based in India for the last 4 or 5 months. And I've been through my fair few share of airports, some small, some absolutely tiny airports, and some huge airports like Kuala Lumpur, Dubai, some of the biggest ones in the world. And obviously my local airport, or one of my local airports, is London Heathrow, which is a huge airport. I really dislike airports. I am somebody that actually overplans and worries about everything, to be honest. And airports is one of the things that kind of stresses me out a little bit. It's been noticeable. I've been travelling until recently for a few weeks with a friend, and she's so relaxed about airports. She doesn't get there early. She really wants to just sort of rock up and get on the plane and go. Whereas for me, that just makes me feel quite anxious. So I think if you're someone like me that finds airports a little bit stressful, there are certainly some tactics and things that you can do before you go, but also while you're there to help the experience be more pleasant. So I think for me, firstly, I try not to rush. So I do get there early, which I know for some people is not great. But why I get there early is it means that I usually get through security, and then I have time to have a coffee, maybe grab a snack. I feel more relaxed doing that, even if it means I'm waiting in a pretty grim departure lounge, because I know some of them, and certainly the smaller airports, they are a bit grim. But I make sure that I have plenty to keep me occupied. So before I go anywhere, I will make sure that I have downloaded podcasts, music, maybe some TV shows on my Netflix. So stuff that I know will be able to kind of distract me. And I know this channel is really about being mindful, but I think for me, the airport is such an intense experience with all of the people, all of the noise. For me, it's better to shut that out. I also invested in noise cancelling headphones in the last few months, which have literally changed my life. Why I didn't do that before, I don't know. Obviously, you need to be aware of announcements and keeping an eye on the board. So you can't really solely relax, even if you've arrived early. There is that element of tension, I suppose, and making sure that you're sitting at the right gate and that they haven't changed the gate, which has happened to me a few times, and just keeping aware. So it's that fine balance between being distracted but also being present. So yeah, so that's the first thing I'd say. Get there early, make sure you've got things to download. I love listening to chanting music. It keeps me really calm, mantra, but maybe you have music that you like that keeps you calm. Take that with you, definitely do that. And I think it's really important as well to ask for help. So sometimes some of these airports are really large and a bit confusing. And before I travelled on my own, I would be quite shy about asking for help. One of the things that I have realised over the course of my travels and my solo travels is I have no hesitation now asking for help. So I'll go to somebody that looks official and I will say to them, I'm on this flight and I'm transiting, what do I have to do? Because each airport is different. Many airports, if you're transiting, you have to go back through security again. Sometimes you have to pick up your luggage. So each place is different, and it's good to talk to somebody that knows what they're doing, can speed up the process for you. I recently arrived, where was I? Maybe it was when I was coming to Laos, but I basically had a connecting flight, and I arrived ridiculously early in the morning. I think it was through Vietnam, that's what it was. I was through Hanoi, it was really early in the morning. There was hardly any staff about. It was really unclear where to go as a transit passenger. I think if you're not careful, you end up going through immigration and then you're in the country, which is not what I wanted to do. So I asked somebody, I had to wait a little bit for them to open the transit area, but then they did, and a few of us that were in transit went through. I also tend to talk to fellow passengers, particularly people that are on their own. If I'm not sure, I will double check that I'm in the right queue. If I'm not sure, even at the departure gate, sometimes that can be a bit confusing as well. So yeah, don't be frightened to ask for help. People usually are very happy and very willing to ask for help and give an assistance. Another thing that I've learned on my travels, which I wasn't aware of, I usually travel cheaply. I'm not traveling anything other than economy class and with the cheapest airlines as possible. But some of the cheaper airlines do have airport lounges actually, and they're more basic obviously than the fancy ones. But like Bangkok Airways, for example, has an airport lounge that you can go in for free in Bangkok. They certainly did when I transited through there last year. So it's worth just checking, around that. And if you have got a long layover, I had 7 hours in Vietnam recently, in the middle of the night almost. I landed like 4 a.m. or something, local time, 4 or 5 a.m. You might want to consider whether it's worth paying to go into a lounge just to have some quiet space. I actually didn't, because the airport was really quiet and I managed to find a really quiet space, and actually I did lie down and managed to have a little bit of a kind of cat nap, which was better than I'd had the experience of on the flight. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about today, was about what to do on overnight flights. Recently I saw a post that somebody posted on Facebook about feeling the need and what strategies to use to go to sleep. And people were talking about have a drink, don't sleep the night before, take medication, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that any of those things are wrong. I think it's really important that we do what honours us and works for us and our bodies. For me personally, drinking on a flight is a bit of a disaster. I've learned this over the years, and in fact, when I transited through Singapore, I hadn't had anything to drink for say 6 months, 7 months, and I did have a glass of red wine on the flight. It was a daytime flight, it wasn't an overnight flight, but it made me feel quite disorientated. And when I got to Singapore, I didn't feel like I had my full capacity to like work out which gate I needed to be, where I needed to go. So I went and had a coffee and did that. So I think what I'm saying is if you like to have a drink on the flight, do so, but do it very mindfully. Make sure that you definitely drink a shed load of water as well, because it's so dehydrating being on a flight, and adding alcohol into that mix can be a difficult thing for the body to process. And I think going back to not sleeping on flights, if like me, you're somebody, I don't sleep particularly well in a bed sometimes. I'm going through menopause, I have heat fluctuations, I have, all that stuff going on. So for me, being on a flight, I used to get really anxious about making myself go to sleep, and I'd look around and everyone else seemed to be snoring their heads off asleep, and I'd be like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I sleep here? Now I don't bother. I don't even try to sleep. So it's an overnight flight. I don't even try to sleep. I think, okay, I'm going to watch that movie that I haven't seen. I'll make sure I've got things downloaded on my iPad, because sometimes in some of the cheaper airlines I've been with, there's no entertainment at all. So I'll make sure, as I said, I've got things to entertain me. I'll have my Kindle. I can read a bit if I feel like that's what I want to do. I can watch some TV. I can listen to some music. And the big thing that has really helped me with flying and being calm and not worrying about sleeping is the practice of Yoga Nidra. I think at some point I'll write a Yoga Nidra and I'll post that up. But for those of you that want to try it, I'll try and find one on Insight Timer and put a link below. Yoga Nidra is basically a practice where you are dropping into the parasympathetic nervous system. So we have two nervous systems, the autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Now the parasympathetic nervous system is this sort of rest and digest. Most of us, a lot of the time, particularly if we've been in an airport, we've had to be alert, we've been kind of aware of what's going on. We're still in that kind of fight and flight mode, which makes resting and puts stress on the nervous system. Yoga Nidra, without necessarily sleeping, although sometimes it does cause you to have a little snooze, takes us into that really deep rest, into the theta brain waves. And I find that if I do, and on long flights, like when I flew from London to Delhi, I did 3 Yoga Nidras. They're all about 30 minutes long, 40 minutes long over the course of the flight. So I would do one, and then maybe I would watch a bit of TV, or maybe I would do 2 back to back. And I landed, I had no sleep at all. And bearing in mind, I had, just packed up my house and was leaving my life behind and flying to India on my own for the first time. I actually arrived rested. And although I hadn't physically slept on the plane, my body had been able to go into that really deep sense of rest. So I think Yoga Nidra is super underrated. I'm really passionate about it. I'm really passionate about using it actually a lot in my general life as well. In fact, today I've had quite a migraine. I woke up with a migraine this morning. I am in a different place. I've been quite busy traveling again, and one of the ways that I manage that as naturally as possible is that I do have a moment where I do Yoga Nidra, and I will shut the lights off, I'll put my eye mask on, I will completely rest and allow myself to drop into that space, and it's really, really invigorating. I feel like a different person when I come out of it. I feel like I'm on a PR exercise for Yoga Nidra, but it's so underrated in the West. It's just not, we all talk about yoga, asana, we talk about meditation, some people talk about breath work, but why are we not talking about Yoga Nidra? There's lots of science behind this as well. There's a fascinating book from the Bihar School of Yoga for those of you that want to dive deep into this. I'm sorry, I'm probably going way into too much detail, but there are things you can read around the science behind why it works. But do try it if you want to, give it a go, either flying or not flying. As I said, it works in general life as well. Last key thing about airports is that I'll try and be organised for my landing. So I will have a sense, if I'm going through immigration, of what documents I need. There's nothing worse than arriving and being presented with a really complicated form, or it looks complicated when you've had, 0 sleep and you've been travelling for 24 hours. And you're trying to find your visa number and your passport number and where you're staying and when you're leaving and all of that, and your brain can't function. So as much as you can, and maybe this is a little bit over prepared, but it helps me when I arrive, is that I will write that down in my little book before I get there. I'll know where I'm staying, the address of where I'm staying, the phone number of where I'm staying. That also helps me if I can't get Wi-Fi at the airport, if my data's not working, then I know that I have got a way to get to my accommodation. Usually 9 times out of 10, I pre-book a taxi transfer from the airport or from wherever I'm staying, so I don't have to negotiate getting in a taxi at the airport ad hoc. It depends. Like Australia and various other places, I was recently in Bangalore, which has got Uber, which is amazing. That's all fine. But if you're somewhere that's a little bit more tricky and you're not sure, I feel as a solo female traveller, for me, that's always felt the safer option, even if I've ended up paying a little bit extra. So that's just another thing to think about. You might also, again, when you land, you might also want to just think about some key phrases, some key words. Yes, thank you. Can you help me? Something like have it written down, because Google Translate will not be working if your Wi-Fi is not working. And as much as I love Google Translate and I've been relying on it so much in my travel, sometimes it's just good to have a paper copy. And I think that's something that we can do as perhaps slightly older people. I'm used to writing things down. I don't rely on my phone 100% of the time, which I think has been really helpful. So that's my thoughts on airports. Would love to hear your comments. Would love to hear what your strategies are. Maybe it's just me that doesn't like airports. Maybe you love them. And then there is that element of excitement when you get to an airport. And once I'm checked in and I'm in departure lounge and I'm seeing the planes going places, I can get excited. So maybe that's what we focus on. Focus on the positives. We're going off somewhere on a really exciting adventure. So today I'm not sharing a practice. I will be back very soon with some more practices. But in the meantime, safe travels. Do like, share, subscribe. I'm looking to build a bit of a community here, encourage more women like me that are perhaps a bit anxious about travel, that it is possible. And with these strategies, these amazing strategies, mindfulness strategies, yoga, meditation, pranayama, Yoga Nidra, mantra, we can tackle these things with confidence and live our best lives. Thank you so much for joining me. Super travels, have fun.